Welcome to Call Your Hits, a Storm Riders Airsoft podcast. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Today, Pat and I are going to play a little game that I'm calling $1,000 Question. So, the idea is pretty simple. We're going to give each other some fun fictional scenarios where the other person gets $1,000, but there's a condition attached. So, the whole idea is that are you going to take the deal or you're not going to take the deal? And if you're going to take it, what is your plan or strategy to deal with it? So, for example, I might tell you, I'll give you $1,000, but every time you get hit, you need to sing Skater Boy by Avril Lavigne at the top of your lungs until you respawn for the entire day. Are you going to take the deal? You're not going to take the deal,
My key question is, do I have to sing it well? And
to the best of your ability.
All right.
And
am I allowed to sing only the parts I remember?
No, you have to remember all of it. You have to prep ahead of time. You're getting $1,000. You got to get,
I mean, it's one of those things where, am I going to say no to any of these? Do you know how much HPA I can buy with $1,000?
I mean, it's true, but maybe depending on the ones that I've phrased, you'll see.
God.
You may have
I'm doomed.
May have a different opinion. Just before we get into it, I just want to point out for those of you who are on the video podcast, we have new merch in the store. In particular, this design, which I think is absolutely rad. It was designed by one of our Discord community members, and I'm just so glad that we were able to get his permission to use it and create merch with it. So thank you so much. I love it. It's awesome. You can get it on hoodies, stickers, mugs, whatever you want, and I'm just super thrilled about it. So there you go. That's my shameless plug. So Pat, let's get into it. The first thing I was thinking about, I was like, man, we've talked about this before, and I really wonder. So I will give you $1,000, but you have to get a melee kill next game. Otherwise, you owe me $1,500. Are you taking that deal?
Are we playing at Frontline?
Yes.
Are you adding any other amendments to this?
No.
Then I'm totally in. Because I'm just going to ask to play TTT until I get a melee kill.
Oh, okay, yep. That's I never. Okay, damn. I just lost $1,000 pretty quick.
It's just I've gotten 2 melee kills at Frontline, and both of them were during that.
Yeah, that's legit, actually.
But yeah, no. I mean, I feel like that one's accomplishable anyway, just because there's so much CQB gets played on an average Saturday at Frontline that bring a foam sword and hit a guy with it once is difficult, but not unmanageable.
How would you go about that? Just let's think about logically. What would you do?
So honestly, one of the biggest things, I'd break all of my normal rules of play.
Okay, yeah.
Because normally I look at the if we're playing village CQB kind of stuff, I view the buildings as an absolute death trap, and in general, the only thing I want to put into those buildings is grenades. And ideally, my view there is I would like to have 1 grenade per team member on my team so that we can throw as many as needed.
Yeah.
But the reality is I'll be hanging out inside the building with me big foam sword, because once you are inside the building, I suspect my ability to hit you with that sword is going to be much greater than people want it to be.
Yeah. I was looking at old footage, well, not old footage, but footage that I did for a recent video of me going through the bottom of the old 2-story, and I come around the corner and I clear it, and that's just fine. But if someone had been much closer to that doorway than the corner, they easily could have just tapped me with some sort of melee weapon or something like that. So
I think it's really doable. I'm definitely going to bring a Nerf sword or a Nerf axe or something, because that extra couple of feet of reach is going to make that a lot more accomplishable.
Mm-hmm.
And I still don't actually think it's the kind of bet that I'm automatically going to win, unless I'm allowed to ask people to play TTT, in which case I will get your melee kill, sir.
Yes, that's true.
But I do think in that context, if I just go hang out in the older 2-story building has a couple of rooms that basically don't have windows, so if I just go sit as a giant thing that lurks in the dark and wait for someone to come in so that I can hit them with a club, I'm being an ogre. That is sort of the modus operandi of my people, but it also probably will work out.
Yeah, that's fair. And there's a few buildings as well that have like that weird divider in the middle of that building, which I guess might have been a countertop or something at some point. But like again, like if you were to tuck in a corner behind that, like people go into those all the time, and I will be the first to cop to the fact that I never really clear that. I never like peek around. I always just assume it's clear because like
Yeah,
why would
because
anybody?
only a crazy person
Yeah.
would hide under the quote unquote bar
But if that
in the
person
pub.
is
Like,
looking for a sneaky melee kill for $1,000, then they
yeah,
just
yeah,
might.
like, I mean, frankly, if I'm looking for a sneaky melee kill for $1,000, I will pick up. For $1,000, I will pick up one of the cable spools, carry it to you, and hit you with my sword.
Yeah, totally.
Like, this is not off the table. I have rolled those around for cover before, and I would do it again. um,
So I got another one for you, unless you got one ready for me.
I mean, I do actually have. I have one and a half ready for you.
All right.
So my one that I would obviously use here, and like he's kind of ruined this for me, guys. But like after years and years of saying, "Oh no, I hate AKs," I would have asked you about the AK.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I'd have lost that $1,000 too, so that kind of works out. So given you found it big, clunky, and completely ineffective when I owned one, would you run a CO2 grenade, like say one of the 6-shot launchers for 4 weeks, 4 games?
4 week. Oh my god, for $1,000? Absolutely, I would.
I mean,
Yeah,
part
no
of it's
question.
do anything for $1,000.
Yeah, but I think the thing that I would definitely find a challenge for sure is um, I definitely would find it really heavy, very unwieldy. I mean, my rifle is already pretty long, so if on top of that you're putting in all this extra weight and stuff, it
Oh no,
really
no,
would not
no, no,
be.
not on your rifle. One of the 6-shot rotating grenade launchers. That's your
Oh my
primary.
goodness. Yeah,
You don't
no.
get long range guns.
Okay. I mean, yeah, again, so for $1,000, like, yeah, I would use. Sorry, I totally misunderstood the question.
No, it's all, yeah, like
The
the underslung makes that a
yeah,
lot easier.
I don't know, man. Like that would be a really tough challenge. Like I don't even know how I would go about that, especially given like the types of games that we play, right? Like if you think about most of the like team deathmatch games that we play,
We
capture
could
the
have great
flag,
fun in the
etc.
village.
Well, I mean, yeah, but again, like
Pull
six
trigger, delete
shots,
man.
like yeah, okay, sure. So I'm getting rid of one person, but if you're playing on respawns, there have been games where conservatively I've gotten, I don't know, 30 kills, right? Does that mean I have to carry 30 grenades in this context? I mean, kind of, unless I get multiple kills with one grenade, which is ostensibly is possible. But like that still means I need to carry way more shots
Yeah.
in order to do work, right?
And like, trust me when I tell you that like after the first 4 or 5, those start to get heavy.
Yeah. Like I might depending on the game type, if I were to cheese it up a bit, like again, TTT would be fine. Or maybe a game of assimilation where I would just like use my 6 shots and then let the rest of the team carry me to the finish line.
All right, guys, I've shot my load, but there are now 8 of you on my team.
Yeah, so you guys can do the work, which actually, funnily enough, is what ends up happening in some of those later games where um, I did that in the most recent video, the one where like Johnny and I are going through that building or whatever, and he and I are getting ready to attack the church, and he starts moving, and I have him covered, and then out of the left side of my vision, I see like 3 or 4 guys start running because at that stage of the game, like everybody comes out of the woodworks, right?
Yeah.
And so now he's suddenly being supported by like 6, 7, 8 other players. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I don't really need to put in any effort at this point. Like it's done. But yeah, so maybe something like that. I mean, yeah, exactly. I do think like it's an interesting problem for sure. Just because we've talked about it, like those grenades are super cool and they're rad, but they're not effective, and they don't do the thing that a grenade is supposed to do, which is go around a piece of cover or into a window or whatever, right?
Yeah, and I think the answer is very, very different if like we could get the like the good pyro tag-in shells in Canada and use those. I think that would make it a lot more viable. Like I would be a lot more interested in it as a tool there. Frankly, to the point where I'd probably still have one on my rifle. Like, the extra weight never really bothered me a ton. So yeah, like there's some fun to be had there, but with just the shower shells, like I know it's not effective, and I know how much driving not being effective drives you crazy. So I thought it was a good.
Yeah, I had a similar one for you, which is how what would you do? So if I gave you $1,000, but you could only get 100 BBs for every game, and you could put them in like multiple mid caps or whatever you wanted to do, but you got 100 and that is it. How would you tackle that challenge?
Do
Again,
I?
assuming not a TTT, but like a regular run of the mill game,
No more
like a
cheating, Pat.
like a road game, right? Like where we get 3 lives total, that kind of stuff. Like how would you manage that?
So it's funny because I've actually been kind of thinking about that for the last couple of weeks anyway.
Mhm.
This is sort of what what I've been spending my airsoft brain power on in between marking papers. Um, so uh, I would go buy a bag of point fours, and I would dial my HPA setup up to run point fours, and just treat this thing as a semi-automatic sniper rifle.
Yep.
And I, between the parts that are in the gun, the HPA setups, sort of flexibility for that, and the fact that I've got a magnified optic, I think that'd be fine. Um, if you were giving me the $1,000 beforehand, I would probably hand Stefan $1,000 and take his bolt action, put my optic on it, and just go to town because he's got a bolt action that's already set up for HPA.
Do you think his bolt action is
Easy moto.
meaningfully better than what you're currently set up with?
So I've only played around with it a little bit over the course of the summer. He brought it to a couple of games, and we just sort of plinked with it.
Mhm.
So I haven't done what I would want to do, which is sit down and like really dial it the hell in.
Yeah.
Especially like he's not running it with an optic at all right now. So it was sort of like, yeah, I mean, it goes pretty far. Okay. So I'm not sure that the answer is yes, because like I haven't run 0.4 gram BBs in a mag in mine to see how far I can put them on sniper rifle settings for our field.
Mhm.
But the 0.4 gram BBs out of that thing on sniper rifle settings go really far, really straight. Um, it's very impressive. I genuinely, especially now that I've got the Scorpion brains, now that I've got the Scorpion, like I really do think it'd be kind of cool to toss my magnified optic on that, dial it in, and maybe I might actually do this for like a month of the summer or something if I can get away with it. If Steph's into it, like run that as my primary, and then in situations where it's disadvantaged, just pop the disconnect, swap to the Scorpion, and use that in close.
Mhm.
Um, because I think that I'm like a brawny enough dude to get away with the extra weight and the I don't think it'll encumber me particularly.
Yeah, I would concur.
Um, but I don't know if that'll work out to being better. But I mean, even with just the kit I currently have, I think that if I really like dialed in the optic with 0.4 gram rounds and had it up on the semi-automatic only setting, you probably would be getting hit one or two shots most of the time on most of the fields at frontline. I really don't think, unless it's a really windy day, that it's going to be that disadvantageous. So yeah, I think I'm in.
Yeah, and I think too, like just from again a BB management standpoint, having the bolt action is probably easier just because you don't have the option to semi
Yeah,
spam, right?
yeah, it keeps me from being naughty and thus getting
Yeah.
myself into trouble. Um, but like I've seen um, what a couple of bolt action setups, just like running a sort of okay inner barrel and HPA can do. And like, I'm not convinced that it's better than a really tuned Springer, but I am convinced it's way easier to set up and get running. And you don't have that problem of like, I'm trying to pull a 500 FPS spring back with a
My bare
bolt
hands.
with my bare
Yeah.
hands. Instead, I'm just like pop pop, which makes it a lot easier to stay on target. And so like you don't lose you gain some of the practical benefits of the bolt action without gaining any of the annoying things about Springer ones. You still have to hook
Yeah.
hose into it, but like I'm doing that anyway. So
It's interesting. I had this again when I was looking through footage of like I always do, just looking for opportunities to improve, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, one of the things I was reminded of was that remember that rush game that we played that was supposed to go for half an hour and went for like 45 minutes or whatever.
yeah, it's just like, all right, I don't know how this is still going on, but like I'm starting to run out of ammo.
Yeah, and there's this point where we reach the D-Day field, and you're up on the tower, and you're there with Josh Hapgood, and he's got his HPA sniper rifle setup, and you've got your HPA AEG, HPA like rifle setup, etc. Right?
Yep.
And like, I don't think his was meaningfully more impactful than yours was in that condition. Because again, like we're talking like, yeah, does it potentially have way more range? Yeah, but you don't need it because the field is only 120 feet long, right? Or the 150 or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, and I
So
mean,
in that context, I mean, I was just like, you were doing fine, and that's sort of why the wheel started going in my head a little. I'm like, I'm just wondering, like, would it be meaningfully different, right?
yeah, and like I think that there's an argument there, but I will say that he was probably putting down more effective fire than I was there. Although that was one of the games where like my HPA got really low because we've been shooting a ton um, for that protracted period, and it was sort
Yeah,
of like,
that's very
okay,
true.
I'm getting less combat effective here because I just don't have as much air as I need to. It's
Hmm.
one of the reasons I'm going to try the new regulator, just to see if it corrects for that problem, and also the bigger tank, same reason. And like I don't genuinely think it was a huge issue, but I also think that if I'd known that was going to be a 45-minute game, I probably would have refilled my tank beforehand.
Yeah, yeah, totally legit,
And like
legit.
that is a Pat's relatively new to HPA in terms of just like hours of using the gear, compared to what I've done previously, I think. So I'm not mad at myself about that one. It's just yeah, if it's going to be I think really, if we're going to be doing a multi-stage game like that, I'm just going to probably go refill the tank before we start in the future.
Yeah, I think it's one of those like lessons learned that like you make the mistake sort of one time and you're like, oh, okay, I get it now. Like I'm not going to do that again. Or if you do, you know that you did a bad. Like, oh, I know what I should have done and I forgot to. As opposed to this time where you're like, oh, I didn't know, but you didn't know better. So it's not, you don't hate on, you don't not bragging on yourself. It's just another lesson learned, right?
Yep. And like like Chaz has certainly convinced me that I want to try a 6.1 tight bore in my primary setup. And so like if I was going to be doing, yeah, you get 100 BBs per game for a month, say, like per um, individual game, not per like day. I'm definitely going to want to like buy one of those, get that, try that out. Because I feel like if I'm getting 100 rounds per game, I want them to hit. And like that's normally true, but even so.
Mm. I got another one for you here. This is maybe a bit more of a fun one. I don't know how you're going to feel about this. So $1,000, but you have to wear your chest rig and backpack backwards, right? So your chest rig on your back and your backpack on your front.
I mean, like, I'll absolutely do it because $1,000, but also because I like trying dumb stuff. Uh, my backpack has some Molly on it, so like if I'm allowed to put a couple of mag pouches on it, this becomes sort of
Yeah, no,
viable.
it's basically whatever,
So
however it's
just as bad as
sensible,
possible.
just spin it around.
As
Yeah,
bad as possible. All right. Uh, I mean, like when I ran the P90, I kept the P90 mags in vertical pouches on my back because I was also running M4 mags on my front, which
I
was
remember that
just
travesty.
such an inefficient setup. Like, I have done many stupid things at Airsoft, and that is like top
Yeah,
of the
that takes the
list.
cake. Yeah, no question.
um, you know, but like if I'm doing admin reloads, like if I don't need to reload in a hurry, it's probably not that bad. Like, so like I'll try it, and I think honestly, after we finish up, I might go try it. Like, just can I get a mag out and into a gun like this?
I wonder how like how the backpack like the F factor on the front like how that
Oh,
will impact your ability to like shoulder your
I'm
rifle and
sure
like
it's
do all
just like
that stuff.
exactly like going back to running the Cyrus.
Yeah,
Just
yeah, maybe so.
like what's Pat? Yeah, yeah. All right, great. We're even wider. Huzzah!
A
You
lot
know,
of asking your teammates like, "Hey, can you get me a mag,
oh
please?"
my god.
Yeah,
Can you remember like for a long time I ran my radio on my back
yeah.
because I had just wanted to have like 400 mags on the front of, again, on the Cyrus. It's just like, oh, I want like 80 mags here. No.
And you see it on TV and movies, so obviously it's got to be good, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. And like it's very much that like, oh yeah, this like they did it in Generation Kill, it must be a good idea.
Yeah,
Hey Phil,
really.
can you change
Yeah.
my radio frequency for me? This is stupid. Like just
Yeah.
Bad ideas. But yeah, I mean, for $1,000, yeah, I'll absolutely try that. I can HPA an LMG with $1,000. Like, um, is it a good idea? No. Although
On the
fun,
plus side, I mean, you really would take fewer hits to your chest that way. It would really go back to the plate carrier days in terms of chest
it's, it-
protection.
it's
So
true. No more getting shot in the nips.
yeah,
But, but like, oh, terrible.
yeah,
I mean, it's funny because like that. If you want to know how much we shot during that push game, I have an Odin full of BBs in my bag, so I like
yeah.
can reload in the field. And it's not a thing I ever like cared about or wanted to do before, but I'm carrying the backpack anyway, so why the hell not?
Mhm.
And I think if I were running it that way, I just carry one mag and reload the mag that was in my gun with the Odin. I think it might be
Yeah,
better than trying to be like, oh, where are my mags? Help!
yeah, yeah. Although the distinct like you're in the bush, like trying to be stealthy or whatever, and like as you're
Well, I mean,
trying to
it's
reload your
also like
mags.
rattle, rattle, rattle,
Yeah, there's
rattle,
also
rattle.
that. Yeah,
Like when it's in the
and
bag,
it's
it's
worth
not a
no-
problem. But
That's true, and it's worth noting, like the bag that you have is not exactly like small. Like I've received actually the pack that I'm going to be carrying my HPA tank in, and thanks to a tip from Todd, I'm going to be using like pool noodles and stuff to stabilize the tank. I showed you a
yeah,
picture of that.
thanks, Todd. I hadn't thought of that, and I'm stealing that idea.
Yeah, you weigh nothing. It's
Muy
perfect.
bueno.
But it's much narrower than your pack. Like your pack, I found is pretty wide all the way through, right? Like in terms of thickness. Whereas this one, it's like you stuff the bottle in there and it cinches down pretty small. So
Hmm.
it's not as small as like a mini map or something like that. But it's I guess it's meant for a hydration bladder, but I'm not going to be using it that way. So I'm curious to see how that works. I
Yeah,
think I'm going to go through multiple iterations before I land on something that I really really
I
feel
mean,
works
like
for
the
me.
one that I'm running is like it's a hiking day pack essentially. Like you could
Hmm.
definitely like carry everything you need to go for a hike for a day in it, no problem. Um, yeah, in fact, like it was a gift from my father, and he has one as well, and that's what he uses it
Hmm.
for. So yeah, I'm definitely using a bag that is bigger than I need for a HBA setup, but it lets me carry extra stuff, and like it's not slowing me down. Let's be
Yeah.
real. Um, so my I guess my cruel one for you, because I know how much time and effort you put into it. But for $1,000, can I convince you to like wear the parts of your Space Marine cosplay that you could actually play a game of airsoft in
Oh
while
my god,
playing?
absolutely not. Absolutely not. Not a
It's
chance
worth
in
way
the
more than
world.
that.
Not oh my god. It's funny, and I know like this isn't a cosplay podcast or anything like that, but when I made that costume initially and I posted pictures of it online, people were sending me messages like, "Hey, will you make me one?" Right? I will pay you $500 to make me one. Right? And people, and to nobody's fault, but like people don't realize just how much time and effort goes into that, and also the materials
I
that go
do.
into that. Well, you do, right? But like, just for people listening, if you look at someone who has like a crazy big armor setup of cosplay, whatever it is, right? That's tons and tons of materials, probably anywhere in the vicinity of like $500 to $800 worth of foam. Depending on the quality of the foam, just of foam. Then all the materials that you need to assemble it, including your glues and your cements and all that stuff, your cyanoacrylates that you use for like your detail, all the tools that you're going to use, like your cutting blades. If you have a 3D printer or anything like that, the material that you need to feed through that, right?
It's
And then
usually
all
more
this.
expensive than $1,000.
Well, yeah, and I mean, let's assume for a second you have the 3D printer already. Then you need the resin, et cetera, et cetera. And then on top of that, you've got all the other accessories that you're going to need to buy that you can't really just like have, like like the lenses in my helmet I had to make using a plastic bottle, not a motofilm. All the paints that you need, like the spray paints, the acrylic paints, like all of this adds up. And then on top of all of that, you add your labor, right? And for me, that took the better part of a year working on and off. I'm going to say on average probably about 10 hours a week, right?
It's
So you,
almost certainly easier to like learn to make actual armor,
well, it's not that it's easier. I
or
guess my
like
point
less
is,
time consuming.
well, perhaps maybe so. But my point is to say, like, by the end of a project like that, especially your learning curve, et cetera, you've invested, conservatively 400 hours into it, right? And so, depending on where you live, and just looking at minimum wage, 400 hours multiplied by minimum wage is way, 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 way more already than the $500-$600
Well,
that
I mean,
someone
you're
is willing to offer you, right?
13 weeks of
Right?
pay.
Like it's
Like,
wild. So yeah, so then in addition to all of that is the fact that then you have something that you have built and that you're super proud of that Airsoft will absolutely destroy, right? Like
emotionally invested
this,
in.
it has no hardness, right? It's made of foam. BBs will shoot right through it, right? And after a while, it will damage the glue, the adhesive. It's going to pop out of shape, and then it'll be completely
It will
ruined.
fail
And
structurally.
yeah, there's zero interest in wearing that for Airsoft for an actual game, and no amount of money. I mean, yeah, if you said, "Hey, Phil, $250,000," yeah, maybe okay, fine. But
Yeah.
like for $1,000, it's no, like I'm not even in the money for that, right? So
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, totally.
no, absolutely not.
And I mean, I knew it was going to be a no, but I figured the reaction would be entertaining.
$1,000, but you have to announce your exact location to the enemy for the entire day.
I mean, like that's just like playing with Jeremy.
Yeah. Well, it's actually
which I
a
do
lot
for
like
fun.
playing like me. It's like playing with me too, because like I'm shooting and shouting all the time too.
I mean,
right?
yeah,
So,
like half the time we're not trying to be sneaky anyway. But like to be honest, yeah, while I do enjoy a good sneaky game, like yes, absolutely. Like can I have a megaphone? Because it'll be funny.
yeah.
Like, you know, for a day, almost any dumb idea that doesn't cause me physical pain is definitely going to be something I'd say yes to for less than $1,000.
And actually, I think for this one in particular, there's a way to turn that into an advantage, right? Because again, like if the other team knows that there's someone on the field who's always going to be shouting out their position, they're always going to be telling you where they are, that gives them sort of something else to focus on.
Yeah.
Right? They're like, oh yeah, we know this guy is over there. And if it's someone like you who has like a really long range rifle, or someone like me who they know is just like, more of an aggressive player, like Johnny, for example, they're going to be like, okay, we're going to make that a priority target, quite likely at the detriment of something else, which then allows your team to, take advantage of that sort of battlefield shaping, right?
Pat, would
it
you
is
be
a
allowed?
disadvantage.
Pat, would you be
Go ahead.
allowed distraction for
Yeah.
a full day of gameplay? Yes.
As opposed to what exactly?
Hey, sometimes I'm a quiet distraction.
But yeah, I think there's ways for sure to think about, like, yeah, individually that would be a detriment to you because you'd get shot at a lot. But from a
I get
team
shot at a lot anyway.
well, I mean, yeah, there's that. But also, like, I think from a team standpoint, there's a way to exploit that to an advantage. So it's not, I don't think it's as bad as it might.
It's
seem
like people
initially.
don't like seeing me and my guns on the other team. I know.
$1,000, but you have to wear earplugs, and I mean like good, like, noise canceling earplugs that you wear for, like, planes or sleeping or whatever.
Oh my god, I would hate that
So you
so
can't
much.
hear basically anything.
I rely on hearing so much playing Airsoft. Like Steph sometimes just like puts in headphones and like listens to music really loudly while we're playing. I'm just like, I am so reliant on that sense for this. Like, I think I would definitely do it. Like, even if you were like, yeah, for like, a month worth of games for $1,000, yeah, I'll do it. How will I compensate for it? I have no idea. I think it would be brutal. Because like if they're good earplugs, like if I'm putting in my noise canceling headphones and I'm just running like white noise through them so that I can't hear anything, like if the goal is like I have to be functionally deaf for the games, then like I'm not going to be able to tell where shots are coming from. I'm not going to be able to tell when people are firing or where they are or when they're firing at me. Like you're going to lose so much information. And like, yeah, I'll absolutely try it because $1,000 is a lot of toys and I'm crazy, but I think it would be really, really hard. Like, I think you'd need to have like, you'd really need to have like a teammate like glued to you all the time and have really good, just like, like tap me and point me in the right direction kind of communication. And even then I think it would be awful. Like, and I mean, I'm sure there are people who are hard of hearing or deaf or deaf in one ear or whatever who play Airsoft and who cope. And I suspect that if I did it long enough, I'd learn ways to cope. And it might even make me a better player, really. I don't know. But like, I know I would find it super frustrating.
Definitely.
Partly because like, as you have mentioned before, like I have a tendency to galumph a bit, like I'm a big noisy thing. I have the grace of a larger, clumsier animal, and I'm a large, clumsy animal, so that's not great. But like, can you imagine not being able to hear yourself move?
Yeah.
So
I was,
yeah,
as I was thinking about this one, one of the things that popped in my head is I wonder about airsofters who are hard of hearing or who are deaf or deaf in one ear, as you mentioned. And I'm sure they're out there. I'm
mm,
sure there are people who are deaf or hard of hearing who
totally.
play airsoft. And I really wonder, like, how do they get around that? I think there's, it's because this is a game, right? You can have people who normally would not be able to be in those types of situations, who might be an amputee, for example, or who have other sorts of physical disabilities. Um, Probably not blind, but
Yeah, that one seems.
certainly potentially deaf or mute, perhaps,
Yeah,
who play. And I wonder how I really do wonder how they get around that. And there's this thing that you can do in some restaurants where you go and you dine in the dark, right? You have these very fancy meals, but it's pitch dark, right? You can't see a thing. And in that context, you sort of learn a little bit what it's like to be blind. And you learn to rely on your senses. And I wonder if you tried that for airsoft, and maybe that's an idea for a video, I don't know. But I wonder if you try that for airsoft, how would your other senses compensate, and how would you organize your team with your teammates, right, to work on that? Because just because I can't hear doesn't mean I can't talk. If I shot at someone, I could say, hey, there's a guy on the two-story. Now, whoever says anything to me, I wouldn't hear them. I mean, whether I pay attention to them in the first place is a different conversation. But like, I still would be able to pass information at least one way, and I really wonder how that would shake out.
and like it's funny because like if people really want us to try, like I'm actually kind of game. Like this is not an idea that I'm opposed to trying out. Like I said, I think it'd be super frustrating, especially until you adapted. But I do think it'd be really, really interesting as an idea to explore. Like it's a weird
Mm-hmm.
concept to me, because like um, like, it's just such a big part of how I approach stuff. Is just like like I know there's a guy there because I can hear him breathing around the corner.
Yeah. Right. Well, you can hear the BBs impacting the piece of cover that you're behind, so hey, maybe now is not a good time
Yeah,
to peek out,
right.
right?
Like, yeah, no.
Yeah.
Like I'm actually curious. Like I'm game to try that in a like just how will this work out kind of
Yeah.
way. Admitting that like it's very possible that I'll like play a couple of games and be like, nope.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it's a cool question.
What about this one? We'll give you $1,000, but every time you fire your rifle, you have to reload.
Sure,
Yeah.
I like reloading. Like
So
I
how would you arrange yourself though? Because
I don't
again,
I don't
it's
think
like
it's
that
gonna work.
six shot.
I don't think it's gonna work well. I think you're setting yourself up to have just like a day where I don't accomplish anything. But like especially if I can just like shoot, pull mag out, put mag back in. Like if I have to do a full reload from my vest, then I'm gonna run into that problem of just like how do I carry enough mags?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
um,
But I mean, you're
you
you're
know,
you're thinking outside the box a little. I'm just curious how you problem
you
solve
know,
this.
um, and I think again, like, and I seem to be feeling like this is actually a really positive aspect of the HPA kit. I own a lot of mags. You own a lot of mags.
Mhm.
I own a battle belt. Like, I think I just bum mag pouches and just like load the hell out of everything. And I also think I probably do that same thing where I bump the FPS on the bump the pressure on the gun up by the point .4 rounds and just like run it as a sniper rifle and just go, all right, pull trigger, reload, move, get like, just try to focus on like a really far back fire and move kind of play style. If I'm trying to actually make this work. Um,
I mean, in
because
fairness,
it's
this is kind of like that muzzle loading question too, right? Because
yeah, well, it's a little more efficient than the muzzle loading question, just in the sense that like I'm not sure there's a way to do that. Like there probably is an airsoft gun where we can do it. Like I guess if you had like a gas gun, you could maybe do it, but like you have to be able to set it so that it locked back on every cycle,
Mm.
which is not how those normally do. Although some of them have the option. So like workarounds. At least with this, like I can carry. In some ways, this is more manageable than the like 100 rounds per game thing because I can carry as much ammo as I want. I just have to do something mildly labor intensive. And I think the answer is like if you're not operating it like really as far back as I can get with the setup that I have, because the setup, like I have an advantage here in that the setup I have can pull really far back. I think that other than that, I'm really not going to enjoy the experience. Like, I don't think I can functionally do that in CQB and do okay.
Yeah, if you're engaging targets like 40 feet away, like, 10 meters or
yeah, well, I
whatever,
mean, they're just
12
like, I'm going to pull the
meters.
trigger once, and they're going to either get hit or not, and then they're going to rip me. Right?
As I was thinking about this and as we're talking, you could use one of those mag clamps, right? And have like, so you could have your rifle up or whatever, and you pull the trigger and then just and then shoot and then just move it back and just go back and forth and back and forth.
I mean, that works really well. If we can get a G36, we can stack like 6 of them, so I can just go.
Yeah, okay, bud.
Which is, yes, definitely getting like a little silly, but like, why not?
Well, you only need the 2, like, and then like get multiple pairs, right? So you're like, once you're done with that pair, you ditch it and get the new pair. Or whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, if we're doing this like genuinely, I think like 2 mags, 200 round mid caps clamped together are going to do everything you need for most games anyway, because you're going to waste so much. You're going to waste so much time actually manipulating them that you're not going to get to shoot anywhere near as much. Like, it just, I think it becomes silly in that case. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's a silly idea anyway. Like, and I know, honestly, like, I'd be down, especially if I could get the mag clamp. Like, I'd be down to try that for a game just for the shits and giggles again. Like, this is a crazy idea. Let's see how bad it is. Oh, it was very bad. Good.
I feel like it's at this point where it's like, oh yeah, like, we've done everything we want to do with airsoft. Now let's just mess around and do all this this weird stuff that's like off the cuff. Right?
Well, and like, one of the ones I was going to ask you is, so like, how many games? Like, it's not quite the right question, but how many games do you think I could convince you to strap a Claymore mine to your chest and just charge forward and set it off for $1,000? Like, how many days of play can I make that your day?
Like, the only thing I do all day?
Yes.
Like, man,
just yell really loudly and run in that direction.
But I mean, for $1,000, like, I'd do it once, but like, I wouldn't want to do it multiple times. Like, I think it would be hilarious.
Gonna get too annoying too quickly.
Yeah, it would get stale real quick.
That's like, probably the right answer, and a fair one. But I continue to try to find a reason to buy an airsoft Claymore mine every season.
And I think, it's not like the other question that we were talking about, where it's like, what if, you have to announce your position all the time or what have you? Because in this case, like, the first time you did it, the other team would be like, oh my God, what the hell is happening? And they'd be completely flat.
Yeah, it'll sort of work once.
But then after that, they're like, oh yeah, we know the drill, just shoot him and we're done. Right? Like, so I think it would get really, really stale really quick.
I guess the other one is,
one day of play for $1,000, yeah. But
can we like convince you to play like, if I gave you just like the only thing you get is Claymore mines, but you get like a bag of them?
Yeah, I mean, in our time playing, like, we haven't, like, I've seen them used or brought to the field like a couple of times, but again, they're not super, super effective just because of the style of games that we play.
Yep.
Right. Like, you're typically not going to be moving up to the field and then planting a mine to cover off an advance that the enemy is going to come back to. Like, most of the games that we play are too linear for that.
And I mean, realistically, most airsoft Claymores are in terms of their like net effectiveness. I mean, I think that like, pending, because again, I've never played with one. Like, I know you can get ones that you can wire like 6 of them to a flip trigger, like, so you can actually cycle a group of them. And like, I think if you had the money to buy 6 of those and network them and like they work, which is iffy, they'd be fantastic for like D-Day. Right? Yeah. Just like as a last defensive measure there, I think it'd be amazing. But then that's literally using them for what they're for. Right, or for what their real world analog is for. So like the other stuff that I've ever thought about them as being practical for is mostly like, again, specific game modes or weirdnesses. Although again, like, if we could, like, it's not feasible because they're like, again, like $100-$150 Canadian per. We're not going to buy 12, but like, I think it would be funny to just like carry a sidearm and 12 of those and just see what you can do with it.
Give me 2 grenades and we'll talk.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's arguably like, I could have asked you, I discarded this question because like the answer is way too easy for both of us, but like, would you just play with a sack of tornadoes?
Yeah, yeah,
And
100%.
the answer is,
Yeah, if we could find, if only because then I'd have a sack of tornadoes. You
well,
know what I mean?
right. But
Like,
like, also, when wouldn't we have, right? I think there's no
yeah,
point since we encountered what those do where we wouldn't have been like, yeah, I'll play with a sidearm and a bag of these. Sure.
yeah. Rest in peace, tornado grenades. I think this season is probably gonna be my last with those. I don't think they're gonna survive.
No, I mean,
I think they're just
we were
like I
sort of
don't
at
have
the
enough parts to fix them.
yeah, we were sort of at the like get new ones point with almost all of ours. So I guess the answer will be we find a new grenade that works well, we hope.
Yeah, ASG has one that I'll hopefully be looking at this year. I mean, I may pick it up or I may save my money for a trip down south. Who knows?
Yeah,
To play airsoft, I mean, right? So
yeah.
we'll see.
I'm sort of at, well, I'm not even sort of. I'm at, I have HPA stuff that I want to buy, and that's probably a priority for me over grenades. Um, Even like because I don't make good choices because these are less effective than the grenades, but I want them, so I'm buying them.
Yeah.
Um, you know, but if we can find a good one that's like around the price of a tornado, that's also not a hard buy for me. It's just a matter of
So
finding one.
yeah, I've got a one last question that I think is going to be maybe harder for you. I think, but we'll see. And you tell me what you think. So you $1,000, right? But you can't stop moving for more than 5 seconds at a time,
Ooh, Pat is not fit
right?
enough for this game.
And I don't mean you have to run. I don't mean that you can't like shift and cover or whatever. But you have to move from where you are to somewhere else every 5 seconds.
So like I think that's gonna suck partly because you really want to be in cover a lot of the time. Like fire and maneuver is a great concept. And like I do work really hard to like try to fire and move as much as I can in Airsoft because as we talk a lot about, like that aggression works really well.
Hmm.
But like I don't think I can effectively get from cover to cover without getting shot under that rule very easily. I think it's going to end up with me getting shot a ton. I'll probably still try it, especially because like, $1,000.
Yeah.
But I think it'd be terrible. I think it'd be terrible, like if we're talking about a frontline, because 5 seconds is less time than it takes for people to stop shooting. Like I don't think I can count to 5 Mississippi and be sure that there are no longer rounds coming into where I will be moving to, especially on like a player dense day. Um, we play with a lot of players who really like shooting. Like just
Yep.
a lot of ammo will be coming in my general direction. And a lot of the time you need to stay put for longer than 5 seconds for people to give you a chance to like get up and put rounds down and move. So I think it's going to result in a very death heavy gameplay approach for me. Like I think I'll spend most of my time not being in the game or effective. And I think that's equally true for you who, like you don't have the sort of like, potential fitness issue that goes on there, but like there's only so much cover you can move between.
Hmm.
And like you're putting yourself at a lot of risk. And I think just like if you're actually trying to follow that hard timer, like you're actually trying to honor that, independent of the fact that like you'll find it challenging to keep the timer track going as well as you would like. I think you're just going to get smoked all the time, because you're going to have to come out of cover to do it. And that's not going to work well.
Yeah. Well, as I was thinking about it, like I did count it out in my head, and I was like, that 5 seconds seems like a really long time. Like once you actually start going, and you're like, okay, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, 5, 1,000. Like that's not an insignificant amount of time. And I was also thinking like there's pieces of cover that are big enough that you can move from one side to the other, right?
Yep.
So you're, and I've done this many times. I think, whenever I think about these scenarios, I often think about like the road game, and I think about that smaller village, right? And there are buildings that are pretty wide where I've had it multiple times where I'm like coming around the right side corner and I'm shoot, switch shoulders, go to the other side, which is, 4 feet away, shoot from that side. And, that's fine.
And like, I feel like that's very effective on that field. But if you think,
and getting out of it though is a different like whole kettle of fish,
totally,
right? Like completely different.
But like, also like, can you think about trying that on like the D-Day field?
Well, it depends on which side you
well,
are. If you're on the attacker side, you better be moving every 5 seconds or what.
Fair, but like,
but yeah, I take your point. Or on like, if you're doing like CQB in the village, probably pretty easy. I mean, if you're sitting still for more than 5 or 10 seconds in CQB, like,
yeah, like CQB in the village is
well
you should
you,
be
right?
you should be going go 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 go, and if you're not, we have questions.
And I think like, fundamentally, you're taking a tool out of your toolkit, which is that sometimes the situation calls for you to just sit still for a second, yep. right? And just wait.
And I mean, like, let the other... there's a lot of, frankly, you know, like, I've lost who I'm quoting, which is unfortunate, but, you know, never interrupt the enemy when they're making a mistake, right? Yeah. Like, there are situations where just stopping and not moving gets you a lot of work done. And so taking that away is going to make your life, I think, notably harder. I don't think it's impossible to play effectively like that. You know, give me a couple of cups of coffee and we'll try. But and hey, if you give me a couple of cups of coffee at the beginning of the game, we will also be simultaneously trying the yelling all the time one that we were talking about earlier. So like, we'll get 2 for 1.
Yeah. But it's a fair point. I think I talked about this with Johnny at one of the games that we played a while ago. It's like when you get accustomed to a feel too, like there's a bit of a flow that happens and you sort of understand how the game plays out. And in certain cases, you want to shape the field. You want to sort of canalize the opponents in a particular area, right? And if you're constantly pushing that, then that's never going to happen. You need to sort of pull back a little to let them get into this area where you now have the advantage, right?
Yeah, and
so yeah, I totally hear you there.
And yeah, I mean, like, it's funny. Before we started, the Discord chat asked me about, like, you know, combat manuals and stuff I've read that I try to apply to Airsoft, and one of the most practical ones is just, you know, really, I suspect, but the one I've read is the US small unit tactic stuff, and there's a lot of talking about thinking in terms of shaping the engagement so that the gunfight occurs where you want it to on the terms you want it to, and that is a big part of how we play. Right? Like, if we're trying to organize and we're working in a coordinated way, which we don't always do, like sometimes we are numpties, but when we're being sensible, that is the approach we take, and I think this makes that impossible, right? Now, I mean, there are genuinely upsides to the just go 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 push 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 approach. You can you know, to keep using sort of like the modern military parlance, like you can apply shock and awe in Airsoft. Like, you really can just apply, we are going to win this gunfight by putting a dirty pile of BBs in the appropriate direction and just pushing really hard. But I think that even in that mode, I still want to be able to pause for a second periodically. And I think that 5 seconds is probably not going to be enough. But I also think for $1,000 that I will get shot in the face all day.
Give it a shot, yeah.
Like, you know, like if you will give me $1,000 to just get shot all day at Airsoft, like to just walk around and let people shoot me right now, sure,
done. Yeah,
like,
done.
Pat wants to HPA the LMG. You know, but that's more of a like, how many dumb things will Pat do for $1,000?
Spoiler alert, I've been friends with Pat for a long time. The answer is basically all of them.
Yeah, pretty close. Like, will it permanently or like for a protracted period injure me or prevent me from going to and doing my job? No. So for $1,000, would you play a day of Airsoft in chainmail and a full plate helmet? You can still wear your like tack vest over, or your plate carrier over the chainmail, and your goggles under the helmet, but like, you have to deal with all of the suck of that for the day while playing Airsoft. Bear in mind that my chainmail weighs 40 pounds.
So caveat, like, we're not doing this on the hottest day of summer.
No, like, on like a reasonable day of Airsoft where that won't literally kill you. Like,
and also if anything gets damaged, I'm not financially responsible. In that case, absolutely. I mean, I think there is obviously, like, wearing chainmail is not something, and wielding a gun is not something, not those kinds of guns anyway, it's not something that people have ever done historically, right? So I don't think there's any
the M16 and the chainmail is a little ahistorical, just a tiny bit.
I don't think there's any, what is it that Johnny calls it? Experimental archaeology?
No, not so
I
much.
don't think there's any experimental archaeology to be found, but I do think...
A fair bit of Monty Python, though.
Yeah. But I do think though it would be interesting just from the standpoint of, whether I'm using a gun or whether I'm using a sword. We're talking about extreme physical exertion, and physiological stress, right? I've talked about this before in one of the videos we have upcoming. I talk about it as well. Like, there is physiological stress that's associated with playing airsoft. And so if you tack that on with the fact that you're carrying a tremendous amount of kit, way more kit than I have ever played with, even, when I was wearing training plates and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, like, I think it would be an education in more ways than one. But I think it would be very eye-opening too.
I
As
think it'd be
to,
absolutely brutal. I don't think
yeah,
it would be unfun, but I think it would be punishing.
yeah,
Like, I've fought with swords in chainmail for like air quotes, a protracted period of time. So like 10-minute bouts, a couple of them over an hour. But like, that sucks.
yeah. I would be down to try it. I think, I don't know what is going on with me, maybe in my middle age or whatever, but I'm at a point now where I'm looking for physical challenges for myself, to try and push myself in different ways, in ways that I haven't been challenged before in my lifetime. So like the idea of doing that 4x4x48 challenge I was talking to you about a little while ago. I'm getting into like ultra marathon running, so like 50K plus trail running, all this kind of stuff. And a lot of that comes from this like desire to just see see what I'm capable of, right? See,
Well, I'm like,
like, am I able to get through this physical hardship?
you're also
And I think that would certainly be a good test of that.
totally. I mean, I also think that, like, addressing that the first piece, like, yeah, I think that you're in the best shape you've ever been in. And that probably helps your inclination to be like, oh, what can I do?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah.
Like, it's speaking from experience, it is a lot easier to be like, oh, I wonder if I can do 100 push-ups when you're actually doing 50 regularly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I don't mean that as like a negative in any way. Like, do it
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. No, I
You
get you. Yeah.
know. And if you do want to ever try playing airsoft in chainmail, you know a guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I suppose I do.
um,
But I think your chainmail probably would be a little oversized for me.
I mean,
But
yes, just what is it the French say?
mostly in the length, is that's what I'm
petit
concerned
peu.
about. Yeah.
It's
probably like 2 feet too long for me. I'd be like tripping up in it.
I mean, it's just a full length hobberk for you instead of
Yeah,
a knee
that's
length
right.
one. He will get me
So
for that later, folks.
I'm good to end it here.
Yeah, no,
To close out the
this has been
podcast. So
fun.
for those of you in the chat, stick around because we'll do the Q&A after we do the closeout.
Hopefully you've found this entertaining. I'm gonna ask. I didn't want to ask while we were doing the podcast piece, but like, are you using Discord for the chat, or is
Nope, it's right on the live stream on the YouTube page.
on the YouTube page?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
All right, so I'm going to close it out. Are you ready to go, Pat?
Yeah, I'm good. You're
Cool.
gonna have to tell me what's there because I don't have that chat open. I thought initially that it was the
problem.
chat for the piece of software you're using, and I was wrong.
I got you, Pat. Don't worry about it. All right. So thanks for listening, everyone. Hopefully you found this new format entertaining. It's something we're trying out. We've done a little bit of this and that in the past and answering questions. We thought this would be a good way to try some different types of conversations. So if you found it interesting, definitely leave us a comment. As well, if you want to keep the conversation going, as we always say, we have a tremendous Discord community with lots of people from all around the world, and we'd love to have you join. The link to that is in the description. As I mentioned at the start, we do have new merch on the store, including this design. Check it out. You can get it on anything you want. It's on our Threadless store.
Would you mail that shirt to a viewer for $1,000?
For $1,000? Yeah, like if someone wants to pay me $1,000 to mail this shirt, absolutely, it's in the mail for you. It's a men's medium. You got it.
We'll sign it.
But guys,
please,
thanks
no.
so much for listening. Yeah. Thanks so much for listening, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week.